Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson speaking at you from Sunday, October 13th, 2024 in the Space and Time Continuum. And we're going to go back in time right now to when you were first born. When you were born into this existence here in your body in the third dimension on planet Earth, you were given 5 physical senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. I remembered them. I actually had to look them up. No. Now, science has even come close to proving that there are things that are beyond our physical perception. You've heard of the sixth sense. People have been talking about it forever. Your sixth sense. It's not a physical thing. It's your feeling, your general perception, your gut feeling. You got a gut feeling. To quote Devo, it's your intuition. Now, everybody's asking the question, why is this election so close? And the reason they're asking that is because, according to everybody's intuition, Kamala Harris should be far ahead of Donald Trump. Everyone's all scared. Like, why is this so close? They're scared because it's crazy, because your sixth sense tells you this is effing crazy. Now, it was only 1 week ago. You're probably listening to this on Monday, October 14th. It was only 1 week ago that Kamala Harris was on 60 Minutes. That aired just last Monday. Seems longer ago. She had a big media blitz. She was on, what other show? She was on Call Me Daddy, which I didn't previously realized this, I guess because I'm not a super young woman, but she's got millions of listeners. It's the biggest podcast, or the second biggest podcast ever, or something like that. Kamala was on there. Killing it. She was on The View. Killing it. 60 Minutes. She killed it. Howard Stern. A candid conversation. Go watch these. She was amazing. Everyone's like, oh, nobody knows who she is. She needs to get herself out there more. Well, she did. Then everyone's saying, oh, she's getting out there too much. Or, yeah, she needs to talk more about policy. She did. Anyway, it was only a week ago that all happened. She was saying great things, putting out great policy. She even introduced a great Medicare policy, Medicare at home. Big policy measure she unveiled. That's her own. And still people are complaining. Well, Trump is saying things like this.
They want to do things like no more cows and no windows in buildings. They have some wonderful plans for this country.
That's what the other side, that's what Donald... okay. Also, you got to ask yourself, who sounds more like they're going to win? You got Kamala Harris acting the way she is. She's looking pretty relaxed. She's going up to microphones right off the airplane, talking about, I just released all my medical records, where, by the way, it's reported that I'm in really great health. How come Donald Trump isn't releasing his? Especially after he supposedly got shot, which, I don't know. Where's the wound on his ear? You know, I'm not a conspiracy. I don't know what happened there. Obviously, there were bullets. A guy died. Obviously, a young kid shot. I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it's just so weird. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. Here's a new story that just came out. Donald J. Trump took his seat at the dining table in his triplex penthouse apartment atop Trump Tower on the last Sunday in September, alongside some of the most sought-after and wealthiest figures in the Republican Party. There was Paul Singer, the billionaire hedge fund manager. We don't need to go through a bunch of complete a-hole, horrible people, including Betsy DeVos and her husband, were there. Billionaires. Some politicians might have taken the moment to be charming to the donors. not Mr. Trump. Over steak and baked potatoes. By the way, I went out last night into Minneapolis and had one of the greatest dinners I've had, and it was swordfish. And it was made immaculately. I mean, if I was a rich guy, I would have the chef from that restaurant, making food, especially when I'm trying to entertain big donors if I'm running for president. Steak and baked potatoes, and probably a lot of ketchup on the steak. Anyway, he made it clear that people, including donors, need to do more, appreciate me more, and help me more. He disparaged Vice President Kamala Harris as retarded. He called her retarded. Okay, going on. He complained about the number of Jews still backing Ms. Harris, saying they need their heads examined for not supporting him despite everything he had done for the state of Israel. At one point, Mr. Trump seemed to suggest that these donors had plenty to be grateful to him for. He boasted about how great he had been for their taxes. Does this sound like the guy who thinks he's winning the election? Does he sound like that? The rant, described by 7 people with knowledge of the meal who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss private conversations, underscored a reality 3 weeks before Election Day. Mr. Trump's often cantankerous mood, and one of the reasons for his frustration, is money. He's trailing his Democratic rival in the race for cash and has had to hustle to keep raising it. Not only does Kamala Harris have far more money to buy ads and pay for staff after raising $1 billion in less than 3 months as a candidate, a sum, by the way, greater than the total Mr. Trump raised all year, but also Ms. Harris has been freed from having to plead directly to donors anymore. She raised more than twice as much as Mr. Trump in July, August, and September. At almost the exact same time Trump was sitting down to dinner at Trump Tower, Ms. Harris was taking the stage at a Marriott ballroom 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles, where she raised $28 million. And by the way, she's still doing rallies. He's doing what he's calling rallies, but they're not rallies. That clip I just played where he said that they want to get rid of cows. By the way, he's no longer going, he's going, and then they just the circles, the beautiful circles, they look beautiful to look at. What is going on with him? This is why your sixth sense is saying, this makes no sense that this is so close. Now, let's talk about the actual things going on, not what I heard today when I took my car to the store to get some food for lunch. MSNBC talking about how close it is. Oh, we're not going to know who wins this until after the election, maybe days after the election. So I understand why you're scared, but that is bunk. It's bunk. It's bunk. About a week ago, New York Times Siena College poll came out. This has been very harsh, actually, and scary for the Democrats for a long time. But last week it came out. The question, caring about people like you, Kamala 49%, Trump 41%. Being honest and trustworthy, Kamala 48%, Trump 37%. Being fun, I wonder why they asked that question. The reason they asked that question is because of what I just described. Trump is living in hell, obviously. He's angry. He's yelling at everybody at Mar-a-Lago constantly, having outbursts. He can't keep it in when he's, his frustration in, I should say. When he's like in Detroit, he's saying it's going to be as bad as Detroit if she wins. Things like that. And then he goes to California, disparages California. It's just hate. So the New York Times Siena poll asks, who's more fun? Who's having fun? Which campaign is seeming like it's fun? Kamala 43%, Trump 35%. And if the election was held today, Kamala would get 49% and Trump would get 46%. A pretty big win. Also, it was found out in this poll, 9% of Republicans are voting for Kamala Harris. In Pennsylvania, 217,366 mail-in ballots have been returned, probably a lot more than that by now. 71% of which are Democrats, and 19% of which are Republicans. The absentee return rate in Detroit is insanely over the top. By the way, my 21-year-old daughter, Eve, who lives in New York going to school, but actually her real residence is here in the 3rd District in Minnesota. Her absentee ballot was received and accepted by the Secretary of State here in Minnesota yesterday. Get your absentee ballots in. There's only 3 weeks left. Took a little less than a week, maybe 4 days. But still, you got to leave some time open. Don't send your absentee ballot in only 1 week before the election. Get it done. Now, this is just one poll, and you know how I feel about polls. This poll is still inaccurate because people like my daughter, who have not yet been able to vote in a presidential election, is not going to be part of any of these polls. She's not a likely voter because she's never voted before. What about people who are just registering to vote? See, I heard this actually on MSNBC. They're talking about all the scary stuff, how, it's going to be so close, and Kamala's losing the black vote. Trump is gaining. He's making gains. But black women registered like 175 times more, 175% more than they did in 2020. You know how insane that is? Those people have never voted, so they're not on the likely voter list. But because they just now registered to vote, that makes them the most likely to vote. They've already shown their passion for voting by registering to vote. That's harder to do than voting. These people are the most likely to vote. They're not on any of these polls. They're not part of any of these polls. So if this poll is this positive, you know what I'm saying. Now, I've said that before. We're running out of time for the first segment here. In the second segment, I'm going to go into some places where we have not gone before. There's even more to this. Real information, including polls that are much more pointed, much smaller areas, so that they can get a much more accurate read. Also, before we go on the break, the dismantling of the RNC. There's no ground game. Republican activists are calling in to the RNC saying, hey, man, there's no ground game going on here. There's nobody door knocking. They apparently hired, I can't remember what the entity is, but it's some bogus entity to do the ground game in Nevada. And they're just pocketing the money. They're not doing anything. And then Elon Musk is in charge of doing the ground game in other places. Some pack of his or something. It's absolutely nuts. And the Republicans are the ones pointing out how absolutely nuts it is because they got no ground game. Now, simultaneously, when I hear all the scary stuff about, from MSNBC, CNN, and I'm sure probably CBS, ABC, NBC, this is so close. We don't know what's going to happen. Trump is gaining. Then they say, whoever does the best ground game is going to win this election. Because it's so close. Whoever does the best ground game. The Democrats are doing an incredible ground game. Kamala Harris, I heard a story. James Carville, of all people, has a friend who's a doctor who said, I want a door knock. Who should I call? He put him in the right direction, and it still took 6 days to get the guy the assignment because they have so many volunteers. My brother-in-law, who lives in New York City, went to Pennsylvania to canvass. People are really involved. The Harris campaign has zillions, I believe exactly, zillions of volunteers and many, many offices to support these volunteers. They have an immense ground game. Trump has no ground game. And Trump is saying things like, they're going to take you. They want to get rid of the cows. They want to get rid of the windows, no more windows. That's what they want. If you want to keep your windows, vote for me. You gotta vote. You gotta vote for Trump. Because I won't make the other sound that we've heard reported about coming out of his particular body that he was put in here in the third dimension on planet Earth, and then he abused it horribly with, we're not going to go into that. I think you know what I'm talking about. It has to do with having to wear a diaper. And all the more reason why he's not releasing his medical reports. Other things the Trump campaign is doing, both he and Vance are going to places and then having T-shirts made, auto workers for Trump. And then a reporter will go up to the 8 people who have those T-shirts on because there's only maybe 50 people at a Vance event. And they'll say, oh, no, I'm not an auto worker. They handed me this T-shirt and asked if I would put it on at the door. Same thing happened with firefighters for Trump at a rally that Trump did. Trump is in California saying that Kamala never went to North Carolina after the storm. He said she essentially didn't even go there. That very moment he said that, she was in North Carolina helping hand out meals for people. She wasn't even doing a rally. She was on the ground helping at a spot where people were in line to get meals. She was doing the real work on the ground. This is why your sixth sense is saying, why is this so close? You're right to think so. You're not getting answers from corporate media because corporate media wants you to stay watching them every minute between now and Election Day. Because they know this race is over, but they don't want you to think that. We're going to talk about some real things that are going on that proves what I just said when we come back on A Satellite View.
Back on A Satellite View. The music you're hearing here, the rock and roll music here in Rocktober,
is all original Todd Mikkelson music. You can go to toddmikkelson.com, push the music link, and find tons of music that I've written over the years. David Plouffe, who worked for the Obama campaign, he thinks public polls are undercounting Harris's support among Republican-leaning independents. This is the feeling of many people. In 2016, the polls were completely wrong. And everybody said, well, it undersampled Trump voters. That was one excuse. Or there were a lot of people who didn't want to admit that they were going to vote for Trump. So they would tell a pollster, oh, no, I'm voting for Hillary. But then they would go vote for Trump. Now, the polling industry is in trouble because nobody trusts the polls, because the polls have been wrong for years and years and years. That same thing that happened in 2016, where everybody was surprised at how well Trump did, most people think it's going to be opposite. You have a lot of Republicans. Say there's a horrible man who's married to a less horrible woman, and they've both been Trump supporters, and that woman just cannot do it anymore. The phone rings and it's a pollster, and she answers, of course I'm going to vote for Trump. But then she really goes and votes for Kamala because she doesn't want her or her daughter to have to die when they can't get women's reproductive health care rights. Women are overwhelmingly going to vote for Kamala Harris, and a lot of those women are telling pollsters that they're going to vote for Trump. That's what a lot of people think is going on. Other things. Polling that are in swing districts, polling going on in swing districts. I saw a report that somebody went in and was talking about Pennsylvania in particular. Now, swing district polling is much more accurate because, first of all, it's trying to get to the point. It's not trying to come up with a national horse race, and it's dealing with a much smaller area. You can poll a larger percentage of the people in the smaller area, and you're going to get a more accurate polling. You have more access to more of the people in your database because it's a smaller area. Swing district polling in Pennsylvania in 2016, if we review it, it showed a lot of trouble for Hillary in swing district polling in Pennsylvania and probably in other states, well, definitely in other states. But the report that I'm talking about was a report just talking about Pennsylvania. And if we go into swing district polling in Pennsylvania, the signs are very good for Kamala Harris. Also, the down ballot people. The signs are very good right now for both the Senate and the House. I'm not hearing MSNBC and those people talking much about the Senate or the House because, first of all, it's not as exciting. If you hear people talking about the Democrats winning back the House, there is a lot of confidence. If they're going to win the House in all of these little swing districts where they're going to turn some red to blue, you think those people are going to also vote for Trump, especially right now? The Trump thing is a lot different now than it was in 2016. Trump has now shown us that he's a flatulent, crazy, drug-addled old man who's losing it rapidly. You have heard me talk about Simon Rosenberg and Tom Bonnier. Yes, it's kind of like the former Speaker of the House, John Boehner. It's easy to say his last name. So Tom Bonnier. Yes. Okay, Simon Rosenberg and Tom Bonnier. Tom Bonnier you should go look at targetearly.com. Targetearly.com, where Tom Bonnier puts up a lot of data. Now, these two guys have been working together quite a lot. Simon Rosenberg has a thing called Hopium, and their motto is do more, worry less. Back in 2022, and even before, they were seeing that these polls are not working. What else can we look at? Special election performance. Now, what has gone on in special election performance, starting in 2022 especially? Democrats have been what they call overperforming immensely. The 2022 election was supposed to be a red tsunami. Do you remember everybody using that term? The Republicans thought they were going to gain something like 54 House seats, and they gained, 5 or 6. It basically was a blue tsunami to fight against the red tsunami. Simon Rosenberg and Tom Bonnier saw that coming. They're like, this does not look like it's going to be a red tsunami. All the polls say it's going to be a red tsunami. They came up with 4 major things to look at instead of polling. That one was special election performance. Second one, fundraising. Who's doing better in fundraising is a data point they started to look at, and they started to see, even in 2022, wow, the Democrats are doing really, really remarkable in fundraising compared to the Republicans. Then another thing they thought, let's look at voter registration. Who's signing up to vote brand new, who, of course, are not part of the polls because they have never voted before. They're not a likely voter. They're not on the radar of the pollsters. Yet they're just registering to vote now. They are the most likely to vote. That seems like a valid, very valid data point to look at. So they did. And then they also started to look at early voting. And right now, early voting is huge. 55% of voters are doing early voting. And by the way, you should be in that group. Early voting makes it so that, say, Kamala Harris doesn't need to spend money trying to convince you to vote anymore because you've already voted. She can take the money she was going to spend on trying to convince you to vote and try and convince somebody else who has not yet voted to vote. It helps a lot with the campaigns in using their resources. So vote early. Voting early is always good. And like Simon Rosenberg says, we want to win this in October, not on Election Day. We want to bank the early votes so that Election Day, they just can't catch up to us. Not to mention, what if there's a big storm on Election Day and then you can't get out of your house and you can't go vote? You're like, damn, I didn't vote. Vote early, please. So these are 4 data points. Now, if you look at these data points right now, of course, I just talked about special election performance. Fundraising, we just talked about that in the first segment. Kamala has raised more money in 3 months than Trump raised in the entire year. Tom Bonnier and Simon Rosenberg are saying polling right now is kind of like it was in 2022, which was saying red tsunami. It was completely wrong. 2022 actually went the opposite direction from what the polls said. Another thing, the polling averages are including 27 right now, maybe more, bad polls. They're just not credible polls. One of them is like 2 high school guys. Some of them are like, you know, when people do on Twitter where they say, hey, push the button of which you think is better, you know. They're including those polls. Like 538 average is including polls like that. If you see a poll called SoCal, it's bogus. It's a bogus poll. It's a Republican-aligned poll. So there are 27 publicly Republican-aligned polls. There is 1 Democratic-aligned poll. And then there are 33 nonpartisan polls. And that's where these averages are coming from. Now, I asked the question, why would the Republicans put out these bogus polls trying to make it look like Trump is doing better than he really is? Wouldn't that just make enthusiasm kind of go down because his people would say, oh, we're doing great, I don't need to vote? Disincentivizing them from voting? And in return, scaring the crap out of Democrats so Democrats all go and vote. By the way, the Harris campaign doesn't mind too much that you're scared because they know that'll make you vote. But there's no reason to be scared. These averages are wrong. They're wrong. Simon Rosenberg, Tom Bonnier, people who are even ex-Republicans who are saying that if Kamala's ahead by 2 points, she's ahead by 5 to 7 points. You've heard me say that. I'm saying it because people like that say it. In the voting averages that the corporate media is talking about, they're skewed by these bad polls. Now, I asked the question, that sounds like a dumb idea. Well, here's why. Trump, first of all, needs to be appeased. So his people need to say, hey, you're doing great, so that he can go, we're doing great in the polls. I'm not losing to a girl. But on Election Day, when he gets his ass handed to him, oh my God, I'm sorry to have said that. That all of a sudden put a picture in my mind that is going to give me dreams that are not good. Oh, I'm so sorry that I said that. He's going to get, I can't get it out. Another metaphor that means you're going to lose badly in the election. On Election Day, and I do believe, one of the predictions that I should have made last week, everyone's saying, oh, the count is going to go on forever. We're not going to know who won this election for days. I think we're going to know by 10:30 Central Time. I think we're going to know. I think states certainly are going to start to get called, and I think the national election is going to be called, I will say, before midnight Central Time, which is 10 o'clock California and 1 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast. There's another prediction for you. I think it's going to be called, the winner, the presidential winner of the election will be called by midnight Central Time on election night. And because of that means it's going to be kind of a blowout. It's going to be kind of a landslide. And then Trump can say, something went horribly wrong in this election. I was leading in all the polls. I was ahead in all the polls. How could I have lost by so much? Because the polls are bogus right now. And the Republicans want them to be. The Republicans want Trump to look like he's doing really well or winning in the polls so that they have an argument that the Democrats cheated. What happened? Why were all the polls showing I was going to win? And then I lost. What happened? Something happened. That's why this is going on. Nate Cohn of the New York Times explains also a lot of these same things about these bogus polls being part of the averages. Nate Cohn is a very upstanding guy who knows about these things. Works for the New York Times, which, by the way, the New York Times is not left-leaning, like people say. And I want to say another thing, Michael Moore. Some of these lefties that I'm not criticizing them by calling them lefties, but they're progressive people who have YouTube shows and things like that. I get a lot of information from them. They're scared. They think Kamala is losing. But then all of a sudden they saw that Michael Moore said, this isn't going to be a close election. Kamala is going to blow him out of the water. And Michael Moore was correct in 2016. Everyone got mad at Michael Moore, including me, for saying that Trump is going to win. Michael Moore went all the way into Election Day for months before saying Donald Trump is going to win this election. Then he was correct about 2020. And then in 2022, weeks, if not months before, when everyone was saying, oh, there's going to be a red tsunami, because that's usually what happens, right, in the midterm kind of times. Everyone was saying there's going to be a red tsunami. Michael Moore said, no, it's not. Are you kidding me? What about the Dobbs decision? This is not going to be a red tsunami. And he was correct. And he was one of the only ones out there saying that. So some of these progressive people were like, wow, Michael Moore says that Kamala Harris is going to have a landslide election. It's not going to be a close result. She's going to overwhelmingly win by a large margin. That brings us back to the beginning of our show. Let's go back in time to the beginning of the show when I reminded you of your 5 senses and then we talked about your 6th sense. Michael Moore asks the question, have you ever met a woman? Do any of you live with a woman? Women are fired up. The Dobbs decision is not going away. Corporate media is not talking about it. They're not talking about abortion rights. They're just talking like this is normal. They hear Trump say all this crazy crap and they go, you know, it's the strategy here is Donald Trump is... He's got no strategy. He's a crazy, drug-addled old man who his campaign can't make him stay home. He keeps wanting to get out of the house and speak into a microphone. They've thrown their arms up. They're like, okay, we're going to get our asses handed to us. Sorry to use that term again, but at least it's not Trump's ass. It's other people's asses handed to us. But we don't care anymore. We just want to get through this and get away from Trump. That's what most Republicans are thinking. By the way, most elected official Republicans want Trump to lose as badly as possible so they can get rid of him and start over. They want to clean the slate and start over. They're not voting for Trump. So you have Congress voting for Kamala Harris, 100% of the Democrats, and probably 85% of the Republicans. They just won't say it publicly. And that reflects on the whole Republican Party. Hundreds of business leaders coming out saying Trump will ruin our economy. Trump said, I'm going to raise the tariffs to 1,000%, 1,000%. He said that this week. It's just insanity. It's just stupid to pay any attention to it. Yet the corporate media is saying, oh, the strategy here is to... This is Lester Holt talking about the strategy of the Trump election. Come on. Use your 6th sense the way Michael Moore is. My God, do you have access to a woman? Ask her how she feels about this. All she's going to say is, I'm voting to protect my reproductive health care rights. I don't want to die. I don't want my daughter to die. I don't want my granddaughter to die. And it's not just if they need an abortion. It could be for other things, because clinics where you don't go primarily for an abortion, you go for your reproductive health care rights if you're a woman. They're closing down. Women can't go anywhere in some states to get any of their reproductive health care. And sometimes they need it or they will die. Women are dying. Republicans are killing women, and they don't care. Donald Trump is directly responsible for killing women, and he doesn't care. So Michael Moore's prediction is much more in line with mine. And really, when you think about it, use your 6th sense. Who's going to win? Is Donald Trump going to eke this out? Because of his strategy to win this election. No. He's going to get mutilated. And he and his campaign already know it. That's why they're putting up these bogus polls and trying to make it look like this is a close election. Lester Holt here saying we don't know who's going to win this election until probably days or weeks after the election day. That's bunk. Don't let it scare you. Don't let it make you not vote. If you can door knock for somebody, door knock for them. If you can give them money, give them money. If you can't do either of those, write postcards. Go to the website of your local, somebody running for the state house or something like that, They will have events listed there. Go to the Kamala Harris campaign website. They will have events listed. You can go to somebody's house and write postcards. Most of the people, I've been to some of these, and they're fun, actually. People have a blast. It's getting together with like-minded people, and everyone has fun. And those postcards are super effective. If you can't or don't want to do any of those things, just vote. That's all you have to do. There will be a landslide win for the Democrats, not just Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, but all the way up and down the ballots. We will keep the Senate. We will regain the House. And then watch what we can do to make this a better country to live in. It's going to be amazing. Thank you so much for joining me here and listening to A Satellite View. We're here to keep each other sane in this crazy election year. Only 2 more shows after this, and then it's election day. Use your sixth sense. Trust it. Trust yourself and your intuition. You do not need to be scared. Again, thank you so much for listening. We will speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.